everyone. Thank you for joining us for our presentation on the effects of technology on globalization. My name is Jenny Kippers, and I am joined by Nicholas Evans, Heather Fitzgerald, and Justine Ladonde to present to you 4 different concepts that are a major factor in how technology is impacting our globe today. To start our presentation, Nick will be discussing the diffusion of innovations theory and how it works to determine the who, what, when, where, and why of the spread of new ideas and technology. Followed by Justine, who will be presenting on the economic advantages of technology in regards to globalization and how it has streamlined the way that industries do business and how it affects the bottom line. Then I will be talking about the increased employment opportunities in developing countries and how it has both positively and negatively impacted the economies. To wrap up our presentation, Heather will be discussing the ethical issues that may arise with the development of new technologies, allowing for greater expansion into the global markets. We hope you enjoy our presentation and look forward to any questions that you have at the end.
The diffusion of innovation is essentially a theory developed by Everett Rogers that works to explain the who, what, when, where, why, and how innovation spreads. I will use this theory to explain how innovation, which involves technology, impacts globalization. Additionally, before we begin, it would be beneficial to define what technology actually is. And it's a wide encompassing idea that can be described as the application of scientific knowledge for practical purposes, especially in industry, or to generally just solve problems. There are 5 key elements to diffusion of innovation theory. These include innovation, adopters, communication channels, time, and social systems. An innovation is a wide encompassing topic that can be a new idea, practice, invention, or technology. To put it simply, it just needs to be perceived as new to the adopter. An adopter can be many things, such as an individual organization, such as a school, factory, or business, a social network, a city, state, or country. Communication channels are essentially what enable the diffusion to occur and take place. Time is basically the length of time in which innovation is adopted. Many adopters may differ in time of adoption depending on many factors, such as social system. The social system is made up of external and internal influences, and these can often dictate how fast an innovation is adopted. An example of an external influence can be a company or government mandate. An example of an internal influence could be a community leader who is well respected. Youngster and colleagues explain in a 2019 article that technology and globalization tend to feed off of each other. And as technology expands, as does globalization, and vice versa. They explain that this occurs through new markets that develop across the world. In the rest of the presentation, my classmates will explain how the diffusion of technology impacts globalization and how it provides economic advantages, employment opportunities, and ethical challenges that it can create as well as solve.
Technology has flattened the earth. Not physically, most of us realize that, but in the business and commerce sense. Consumers can order goods online from anywhere in the world, and they will be delivered to their door faster than ever before. According to Friedman, the internet is defined as a global network linking millions of computers for communication purposes. Because of this, people can connect to communicate and market their goods almost instantly into anywhere in the world. The internet has given rise to e-commerce, which is simply the buying and selling of goods over the internet. According to Panayotis and Kern, 2005, advancements in communication technology have made the world locations as homogeneous with respect to communication as the truck did with respect to transport. Advancements in these technologies have made it possible to have meetings via the internet using products like Zoom and Google Meetings. While these meetings are not face-to-face, they're the next best thing. While it is not, there is much to be gained from a face-to-face meeting. Utilizing communication technology is not only budget-friendly in regards to airfare and other business travel expenses, they allow conferences to happen more often, which could lead to greater innovation from teams, which leads to higher productivity and overall improved customer and employee satisfaction. According to Levinson, as cited in Fustrell, low transport costs help make it economically sensible for a factory in China to produce Barbie dolls with Japanese hair, Taiwanese plastics, and American colorants, and then ship them off to eager girls all over the world. New technologies and shipping development have made it quicker, easier, and for the most part, efficient to ship internationally. Gone are the days, for the most part, of ordering something from a far-off land only to have it arrive 4 months later. Now consumers can purchase products from Bangkok and have them shipped to Dallas within weeks. The advancements in shipping technologies have also pushed shipping companies to become more competitive, which drives down the cost of shipping for the consumer. If you search for assistance in creating your business website, you'll receive hundreds of suggestions, some free, some not so free. This is all because of the advancements in communication technology. 20 years ago, people were not building their own websites, and if they were rudimentary at best and not specifically designed to help with any kind of retail. These websites make it possible for even very small businesses to sell internationally. Imagine owning a small business in Onaway, Michigan, and you're able to sell your items and have them shipped across the world, or vice versa. With the common use of websites, businesses have to be competitive with the world market, which is a plus for the consumer who's willing to shop around for the best deals. Increased customer traffic online and also in their brick and mortar stores increases sales. In the background of these websites, there are the payment processors and online banking that help convert currencies from one to the other and process credit card payments to make these retail sites function. There are more and more of these types of services available as well. So this means that they have to become competitive, which drives down the interest rates to the businesses in which they have to pay for their services. Companies can benefit from low interest rates of card services. Online banking has to be competitive as well, offering higher savings interest rates, free checking, etc. This also helps the business's bottom line.
Now to discuss technology's impact on global employment. In Luke chapter 13, verse 29, it says, "People will come from east and west and north and south, and will take their places at the feast in the kingdom of God." In the first 4 months of 2020, many missionaries have been brought back to their homelands due to the COVID-19 outbreak, and those who were set to leave to serve overseas are not able to do so. The thought that these missionaries would not be able to do what they were called to do became heartbreaking, and they became worrisome, wondering what they can do to continue to do their calling and serve those in need throughout the world. Because of technology and the advances it has made in the world, many missionaries were still able to serve the communities that they were in prior to the COVID-19 outbreak, because their denominations that they serve under have been able to make connections using technology to continue to fulfill their duties as missionaries in their placements in different ways. So technology has both advantages and disadvantages to the employment opportunities throughout the world. In more cases than not, it takes away individual country growth with short-term employment opportunities. One of the ways that technology has an impact on global employment is through the supply chain. So the supply chain is changing drastically and could potentially be disintegrating due to all the product designers and manufacturers spreading out over several different countries. While this is supporting the ability to offer employment to developing countries, it is also causing concern of organizations understanding the cultural and language differences between the home country and the country they are outsourcing in. So this also takes in another consideration that these big organizations that are outsourcing, they need to have time to research and understand what rituals or expectations that these people in the other countries have before outsourcing into their country. So jobs are being created in countries for the specific product that is being demanded, but as soon as the demand goes away for that one product, so does the job that people had to create that product. As much as organizations believe they are helping developing countries by outsourcing manufacturing to create jobs, it is actually in the long run causing more harm as it leaves many without jobs and unknowns of what to do next. This is something that many countries fear, is the inability to avoid the unknown. So consider Ethiopia or Guatemala. They are cultures that do not like to have unknowns. They like to have strict structures and their rituals, and they like to follow their own guidelines. They may make changes to the business plan of some sort, but they know what's coming next, and they can continue to work through that economic growth. So one way to help is if organizations chose to not outsource but keep the supply chains local, it would allow developing countries to have independence and create long-lasting employment opportunities for their people. While right now, many developing countries are dependent on those larger organizations for their increase in economic standing, which is the hindrance to those countries' economy in the long run. So as mentioned before, we just talked about Ethiopia and Guatemala and how their cultures and norms might be vastly different than the norms and culture of the home country where the organization is coming from. And that is a big impact on their employment and the overall demands of developing other manufacturers or products in those countries. But let's look at South Africa, for example. Due to technology use for globalization, many of the jobs have been lost, as well as a drastic drop in the GDP, or gross domestic product, which this is one of the most common indicators that is used to track the health of a nation's economy. And honestly, the GDP in South Africa has been very stagnant over the last several years. And part of the issue is that the use of technology has changed the demands of the country. So this is causing a decline in employment opportunities in South Africa, which is changing the health of South Africa's economy. But because of this, there's a shift in education as well, because the decline in employment opportunities that South Africa is facing, they're making changes in the internationalization of education to focus more on technology skills than on the basics of social and developmental skills, allowing people to learn how to adapt to the digital literacy that is needed to become more marketable, and therefore potentially decreasing their now 27% unemployment rate, because South Africans are adapting their education towards technology. And this is one way that technology is hindering the employment in some developing countries, because they don't have the opportunity to learn or they have to revamp their education system to meet the needs of employment in the economy with technology instead of the normal skills that have been working for years and years prior. The last thing I want to discuss when it comes to technology and the global employment is the inequality that comes with it. As with everything, the concern begins with the opportunities of education in each country. Those that come from poverty-stricken countries, such as Cambodia or Kenya, are less likely to make it out of the cycle of poverty due to lack of education. The same goes for those in low economic cities in the United States. The need for education resources in these areas is a factor into the inequality many countries are facing with globalization. So going back to South Africa, they have acknowledged and are making the changes to their education to focus more on digital literacy in order to help decrease their unemployment rate and improve their economic standards throughout the world. So those that can learn the advances of technology will gain income, but it is not equal from one nation to the next, or even within the same nation. So with advances in technology to also automate the workplace, the opportunities for mid-level managers or labor workers to lose their jobs is a high possibility. The use of technology promotes more inclusive, efficient, and innovative workplaces. On the other side, it also replaces manpower and potential income in many areas around the world.
As demonstrated in this presentation, the explosion of technological advancements that ushered in the 21st century have changed both the way we live our private lives and the way we do business. Although the effects of new technologies have been largely positive, it is always important to stop and evaluate how any massive cultural shift has changed our world and affected humanity. In other words, what are the ethical implications of technology and its impact on a global economy? This quote from Argadonia describes how technology, particularly the internet, has affected our world by allowing knowledge and information to be passed back and forth effortlessly in ways that were previously unthinkable, and thus opening the door to ethical issues that did not exist a mere few decades ago. Technology has the potential to impact the world in an immensely positive way by opening opportunities for underdeveloped countries to join the global economy. It has allowed for information and knowledge to reach areas that were previously outside the news cycle of the developed nations. It has expanded opportunities for education in economically depressed areas and allowed for companies to scatter their workers across the globe, positively impacting the economies of many countries. Entrepreneurship has been scaled so that now anyone with a computer and internet connection and a product or idea can reach millions of customers. The darker side of all of this, however, is that the anonymity of the internet and the ease with which information can be shared has made private consumer data a commodity in the global marketplace and allowed for hackers and file sharers to violate copyrights and manipulate financial data for their own gain. The speed of which technological change occurs has also the potential to hamper the development of processes and the application of ethical standards to processes. One way that technology can be used to better our world is by bridging the technology divide between rich and poor countries. This would call for developed nations to share their technological resources with developing nations through such activities as public support for research into technology needs of the developing world, financing university training for students from low-income countries in STEM fields, and financing representatives from developing countries to participate in standards setting panels, thereby giving the developing world a seat at the table when important decisions are being made. Through this inclusion and sharing of resources, developing nations can receive the tools they need to grow their economies, educate their workforces, and participate in the world market. By bridging the technology divide and sharing resources with the developing nations, we are following God's commands from the passage Deuteronomy 15:11. For there will never cease to be poor in the land. Therefore I command you, you shall open wide your hand to your brother, to the needy and to the poor in your land. For all its pitfalls, there are some things that we can do as humans to use technology in a responsible way in the world. First, we must acknowledge that technology impacts us at all levels. Individuals, social structures, and the global community are all affected by the ways in which technology changes the world. Therefore, we must be good stewards of technology and ensure that freedom of expression and intellectual property rights are protected, as they are both integral to innovation and the social contract. We must also ensure that development of new technologies is not stifled for the sake of profits, which would be disastrous to many industries such as medicine, clean energy, and transportation. We must remember that corporations are not individuals and therefore need ethical oversight from the outside so that they do not engage in campaigns of misinformation or attempt to skirt the law. And finally, we must make certain that we do not comply with unethical behavior both in our personal and work lives. Activities like file sharing of copyrighted materials, online trading in illegal goods and services, trafficking in private consumer information, or corporate trade secrets should be strictly discouraged. In this presentation, we have demonstrated the ways in which technology affects globalization. From the diffusion of innovations to economic advantages of technological advances, and from increased employment opportunities to the effects of technology on ethical globalization, there is no doubt that technology has permanently changed the ways in which we interact with each other as humans, from our homes to our workplaces. Although these changes have posed some concerns, the changes are largely positive. In our use of technology, as with all things, we must be careful to heed 1 Corinthians 3:9, which reminds us, "For we are God's fellow workers. You are God's field, God building.